Hello everyone and welcome to this very brief webinar exploring the opportunities to develop joyful reading experiences. And this is timed to coordinate with World Book Day. So hopefully you are viewing this either on World Book Day or very close to the day itself. So my name is Susie Fraser, I'm Director of Manchester Communication Research School, and I'm just going to consider how World Book Day can assist us in developing joyful reading experiences, and then consider that alongside some of the evidence and what we might do as school leaders and teachers to develop this within our settings. So first of all, just some recent research and statistics around children and young people's reading for enjoyment. For those of us who love reading and find the joy in it fairly easily, it's sad and disheartening to see that these figures for our young people. So only 1 in 3 children and young people say they enjoy reading in their free time, and only 1 in 5 say they read something daily in their free time too. So it's really clear that there is a need and a desire for us to consider how we can encourage children and young people to engage more frequently in reading for pleasure and to provide those opportunities for them. And these statistics come from a survey in 2025 and captures the responses from near enough 115,000 young people. We know that reading for pleasure is really closely linked to better cognitive performance and mental well-being in adolescence. So not only does it provide joy, it has those long-term lifelong benefits as well. And unlike listening and spoken language, reading is a taught skill and is acquired and developed through explicit learning over time. It isn't something that is just naturally acquired and developed. So we have to be really intentional about how we encourage young people to engage in reading for pleasure. We also know that the research tells us that children who did read for pleasure more frequently had less screen time, and we know the risks of increased screen time as well. And so they also tended to sleep longer. So you can see the correlation there between reading, screen time, and well-being as well, and cognitive development. And obviously this research comes from the National Literacy Trust. So just to think about World Book Day and the possibilities that it provides us, what it allows us to do is to platform reading in a really public way. What it does is provide children to start making some choices. The vouchers that children receive on World Book Day means that they have the opportunity to go and choose a book that they want to read, and they have the means to be able to do that. It provides opportunities for shared reading, and we see that a lot in both primary and secondary schools. Something we're doing here at Manchester Communication Academy is staff are going along to visit lessons and taking their favourite book and reading that with the children throughout the day, just to kind of go into lessons that they don't normally teach and in subject areas that they don't normally teach, to kind of infiltrate the school community with shared reading on that day. It can be fun. Obviously, lots of teachers dress up on World Book Day, and it can bring joy and memorable experiences through dressing up. But there are also a range of activities that the young people can get involved in, things like treasure hunts, something that we're doing here, guess the author, secret reader, lots of things that are centred around enjoyable experiences linked to reading. And obviously, more than anything, there is that exposure, the importance of reading, and that is particularly true when we think of it in the context of the National Year of Reading. So the day of World Book Day is fantastic and provides lots of opportunities for us. But we know as teachers and school leaders that that doesn't go all the way. It is one day, and we want to make sure that we are building the habits for children and young people to be reading frequently and for pleasure through their own choice. And the research tells us really that for many young people, the barrier to engaging in reading often comes down to motivation, that they don't have that self-motivation to read. And that could be that they are not sure what they're interested in, they don't know, they've not found that book that has sparked that interest for them and has allowed them to escape into a different world or explore different characters. And so we have a job to do there to make sure that we are doing what we can to match children to texts that they will find interesting and that they will want to read. And we can do that through recommendations from each other. We've got reading ambassadors here at Manchester Communication Academy, and they are sharing their reading recommendations through things like doing artistic representations of characters, for example, or little book reviews. And coming from each other, that might spark an interest for a child that has not previously considered opening a book for pleasure. Let's not underestimate the influence that teachers can have on that. And, there are schools that put on their doors or in their classrooms the books that they are reading. And there's an opportunity to go beyond that, isn't there, and explain why that book is so important to them and what they're getting from that. Something we're doing here at MCA is an activity called Books That Changed My Life, and we record teachers talking about that book that has stayed with them from reading it as a child. And again, not just English teachers, but from across the curriculum. What was the book that changed your life and why? And we're going to video teachers talking about that and share that with our community. Just last week, I came across a student who was really struggling during the day. She'd had a long journey to school, had to travel a long way, and had arrived slightly late. And so there was a little barrier for her in the morning. And we talked about we call our library the Beehive. So going to the Beehive. And I walked to the Beehive and said, why don't we choose a book to read? And she said, I don't read, I don't do any reading. And so we had a conversation about the things that she enjoyed, and we got to the point that she'd been watching Stranger Things and she was really enjoying Stranger Things. So we then looked for a book that explored some of the themes in Stranger Things. That interaction ended with us reading that book together, and I left her reading that book independently into break time. So that is just one small example, that just taking the time to really find out what the interest is, and to then explore the opportunities, navigating a library or navigating a bookshelf, can really support them to motivate them to open that book for pleasure. Just to bring us back then to the evidence, so many of us will be familiar with this, the Reading House, taken from Gough and Tummer's Simple View of Reading. This has recently been updated, and if you access this on the website now, on the EEF website, all of these tiles are interactive, so you can click into each one and you can find further recommendations and advice and resources to support. But if we go back to World Book Day and consider World Book Day as being the door really into the Reading House, it takes us to the door. It allows us that opportunity to explore some of these tiles in a bit more detail. And we know that there's more research emerging around the value of reading whole texts. And raising the bar and raising the challenge around the text that children are exposed to and reading that with them. And that allows them to do lots of this kind of print knowledge and fluency and vocabulary and text structure and inferencing at a whole text level. And they get so much joy from reading that text rather than potentially doing much more kind of segmented reading tuition. So if we focus then on the opportunity for reading fluency, that reading for pleasure is an opportunity to develop reading fluency, but also when you can read fluently, you are more likely to read for pleasure. So we see this kind of interconnected relationship between the ability to read fluently and the ability to read for pleasure. And one really is so closely connected to the other. So it's a decision to make as a teacher around how you open that door and get into either of these as the starting point. As teachers, we can model reading fluently, and that opportunity through World Book Day to read aloud to children and to then continue with that practice throughout school days, reading aloud, reading fluently, modelling how to read a text, to bring a text to life. That can spark an interest for a young person who then might just carry on reading a text or pick up a text of their choice. Also, you might have interventions or activities in place in school that start with that nurturing of reading for pleasure. So peer mentors, reading corners, reading clubs. We have a book cafe here. And those opportunities to read for pleasure, which in time can help to develop reading fluency. So those two things are so closely connected, but also such a gateway into all of those other tiles for reading comprehension, and ultimately that lifelong skill of being able to read fluently, being able to comprehend text, and therefore having those long-term benefits around cognitive development and well-being. So some considerations then for us to take forward. I encourage you to think about those opportunities to motivate and inspire children to read beyond World Book Day. How do we take some of those lovely experiences from World Book Day into our daily life? Where does the explicit teaching of reading fluency feature in your literacy curriculum? And that might be across your curriculum as well as within your literacy curriculum. But what are the core components of teaching reading fluency to all students, not necessarily just as an intervention? How do we maintain that modelling of reading fluency? And is there a way of you capturing which of your pupils do read and which ones don't read? And if you are able to capture that, those students who don't read, and remember going back to that first piece of research from the National Literacy Trust, out of the staggering numbers who don't read, there may be something that could inform an intervention response or a whole school response that is around tackling the reasons why pupils don't read. So taking that National Literacy Survey and creating your own version for that in your school. For now, if it is World Book Day as you're reading this, I hope you're having a fantastic day. And if not, if it's after World Book Day, I hope you continue to enjoy developing those reading skills and reading together with our young people. Thanks very much for watching.